No, I wasn't planning on doing this. But I will. I actually didn't even know. No, it probably I'm supposed to do that, right?
Well, I'll get
John Rogers. I'll do that. I kind of didn't think about it. I've never really done the hearing examiner thing, so I'm not worried, but I'll plan to do that.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the August 23rd board meeting of the Utah Board of Oil, Gas, and Mining. And this is the briefing session. We're going to start with you, Director Bozza.
Thank you, Mr. Gill, Chairman Gill, and members of the board. Welcome back to our meeting in Salt Lake City this time. We've got a few things on the agenda for our briefing session, but first of all, as tradition would have it, we like to introduce some new hirees we have in the Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining. 3 of them are seated immediately behind me, and as I introduce them, if they'll just kind of give you a wave and so you know which ones they are. First of all, we have Tom Thompson. Tom is our new senior GIS analyst. He went to school at Utah State University and gained an undergraduate degree in geography, accompanied with a minor in geographic information systems. He is currently finishing up his master's degree in ecology, focusing on spatial distributions of sage grouse using small unmanned aerial systems, or drones. And I've seen some of his work, and it's really fascinating. So if you get a chance to talk to him later, you'll want to kind of bore in on this.
DJI Maverick Pro.
DJI S1000.
So Tommy said that he's excited to be part of the DOGM team and is looking forward to providing his expertise in GIS, remote sensing, something called Python programming. I thought that was snake wrestling, but it's actually a kind of software, and audio-video work. So he will actually be working with Paul Gedge a little bit to carry on some of these board hearings. He will also provide insight on normalizing our existing databases and associated file structures, helping division members with complex GIS processes, and to streamline some of our data collection and data distribution practices. The next employee is John Webster. John is an environmental scientist in our minerals regulatory program, and he replaces Mike Bradley. That vacancy came up earlier this year. He has a Bachelor of Science degree from Colorado State University in rangeland ecology with an emphasis in restoration ecology. He has over 4 years of experience in vegetative monitoring, wetland assessments, and noxious weed identification and management. He also has a background in surface hydrology, which includes surface water sampling, managing and inspecting NPDES and MSGP permits. And I know what NPDESs are. I'm not sure what MSGP stands for, John. Rill and gully monitoring, and also looking at mosquito populations. He hails from Farmington, New Mexico, and he's previously worked with, done some work with the Navajo mine down there. So he's got a host of certifications, and so we would like to welcome John onto the staff. And then next we have Jennifer Winberg. Jennifer has been hired as a secretary, information specialist in our minerals program, and she replaces Emily Hampton-Berry, who moved on to a job with the State Board of Education. She has an associate's degree in psychology and has been in retail management for most of her professional career. She enjoys anything outdoors and loves to dance. And when she isn't doing that, she's planning for her wedding in October. Jennifer is very excited for her opportunity with the DNR and hopes to learn and grow as much as possible here. And last but not least, we'd like to introduce Emma Whitaker. Emma is the new O'Hara Fellow in the Attorney General's office in the Department of Natural Resources. During several semesters in law school, she worked in the office as a law clerk and is now excited to join the division's team of attorneys. She is interested in the oil, gas, and mining world and is looking forward to beginning her career as a natural resources or environmental law attorney. So welcome, Emma. So with that, hopefully...
Thank you very much, John.
Take the
And
chance to
interrupt you
them.
just to say welcome to all of you. I think you've made a wise decision to be among the most prestigious divisions and departments in all of state government in all of America. So,
thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that compliment. Moving on, our first item on the briefing agenda today is a presentation from a group called Independent Energy Standards. And to give you a little bit of background on my association with this group, I first heard about them at an Interstate Oil and Gas Compact Commission meeting several years ago. I'd also been contacted by a couple of people from Stanford University who wanted to introduce the program to me. So I'm thinking it was 3 or 4 years ago we had them out to meet at one of our quarterly meetings in Vernal and introduce what they do. They are, in fact, an independent review organization that helps companies and gives them a gauge on how well they're doing in terms of addressing their regulatory standards wherever they're operating. I think that they offer an opportunity, much like you would see in the automobile industry for a J.D. Power rating. They give companies an idea of how well they're stacking up compared to other companies. They've invited the Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining to be what is called a cooperating stakeholder. With that, I would be participating in some meetings each year. I would also be allowing them to use our logo in terms of advertising. But I wanted to make sure our Board of Oil, Gas, and Mining was acquainted with what these folks do. I'm impressed with what they offer. I hope you will be too, but let me introduce a couple of their representatives this morning. And first of all, we have Chris Jenkins, a lead project engineer. Chris is a degreed petroleum engineer with 16 years of experience in basins around the world, where he has focused on production and completions engineering. Chris has been performing risk assessments for IES since joining the company in summer of 2016. He works with a variety of client companies, including our most sophisticated clients. Chris is also a member of the International Board of Directors for the Society of Petroleum Engineers. Secondly, we have James Cahalan, who is a customer service lead for the organization. James just celebrated his 1-year anniversary with IES. James has over 10 years of experience working in the energy industry, covering natural resource extraction, specifically mining and oil and gas, to power generation, transmission, and distribution. James acts as the main conduit for IES to their clients, from helping maximize stakeholder and community engagement to differentiating their operations from their peers and competitors. So without further ado, let me go ahead and turn the time over to James and Chris to help explain IES.
Great. Thank you, John, and thank you, members of the board, for having us here today. I'm going to speak briefly about IES and what the Cooperating Stakeholder Program includes. Then I'm going to turn it over to Chris to answer some more technical questions and provide a little bit more depth into how our processes work. IES is an independent analytics and ratings company. We focus on risk, responsibility, and leading practices within the oil and gas industry. We work with a wide range of customers, including oil and gas companies, utilities, insurance companies, and investor groups. Our Cooperating Stakeholders Program was assembled to gather a diverse array of input from organizations such as yourself that can help us calibrate and kind of refine our practices to make sure that we are benchmarking our operators correctly. These organizations are interested in mitigating risk and impact to not only human personnel, so the safety aspect, but as well as the environmental side of things. The support and commitment we ask for from the Cooperating Stakeholders Program and the members, as John mentioned, is to participate in an annual review of our processes, our methodologies, and providing feedback on the processes and priorities from the previous year. I'm going to read over the fine print so you guys understand it, but the program fine print, the cooperating stakeholders do offer IES with independent advice. They do have the ability to opt out at any time, and the only real deliverable we receive is the logo. The cooperating stakeholders do not receive compensation or reimbursement of any kind. They do not participate in the actual ratings that we provide to our clients. They do not endorse company ratings, and they assume no responsibility for any aspect of our business. Our current cooperating stakeholder members are on the screen now, but the Environmental Defense Fund, the Groundwater Protection Council, the Mitchell Foundation, the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, the Oklahoma Office of Secretary of Energy and Environment, and the Pennsylvania Environmental Council. We also have an individual on our program who is Jim Martin, who's a former EPA Region 8 Administrator, and I'll let you read the rest of his qualifications there. We have three main products. Each of our products build on each other, and this product you're seeing now is our SwiftScan. This is our lightest product. This is a data-driven kind of assessment based on operations geographic location. So with this product and service, we look at things like where is the well site, what is its distance to communities, distance to flow lines, sensitive water streams, aquifers, things like that, and that allows us to generate a risk profile based on that specific location. Our next level up is a risk view. This builds on everything that we have understood in our SwiftScan, but we also take into account the operator's controls and their approach to mitigating that risk as well. And those risks can be anything from minor leaks and spills all the way to major catastrophic blowouts. And our flagship product is our TrustWell product. This is the service that the cooperating stakeholders have the most input on. This is where we would actually do a complete risk assessment on either a specific set of wells, a specific set basin, or an entire company's operations. Once we are finished with that, they come into a scoring system, and we are able to provide them with an external seal. Our rating system, Chris is going to talk a little bit more about it, but goes from rated, silver, gold, and platinum. The platinum operators obviously are the best. And I'm going to turn it over to Chris to take it from here.
So when people think about rating systems, they sometimes think of it in a very traditional way, like an audit. To be very clear, we're not an auditing company. We do look for information about how a company does its operations, but you could think of it more appropriately as auditing for the modern era with a large data-based component to it. So for example, it's very dynamic in that when we look at an operator, we look at what are the risks in the specific area they're working in. Are there freshwater issues? Is freshwater available? Are there competing uses for freshwater in the area? Is the operator operating in an area where there's a lot of population? Are they operating an asset that produces hydrogen sulfide? Are they operating in an area that has environmental concerns, very sensitive, or maybe it has endangered species, and so on and so forth? And when we do our reviews, everything is adjusted to look at how the operator is evaluating and managing the risks that are specific to that area. So it goes beyond simply complying with a best practice or a regulation. It's, do they recognize all the risks in their area, and are they accounting for those? So you can see the image on the left is just a graphic that kind of illustrates the range of variation there can be in one particular aspect. This one happens to be land value, economic land value, but there's lots of different lenses we can look at for how an operator, all the different things that they're dealing with. On the right, we are concerned with what measures and controls they're putting in place to manage those risks and to make sure that those controls are effective. So what we're doing when we look at an operator's work, we begin with what is the inherent profile, or you can think of it as the inherent risk profile of the area. As I said, are they in a populated area? Is it very rural? What's the access to emergency services, and so on and so forth. So what does the risk look like when you begin? And then what does the operator put in place to control those risks? Are they well done? Are they well managed? Is it a little bit rough around the edges? And then lastly, we put all this through a performance scoring model where we're combining the inherent risk of the area with what they're doing to control and manage risk, and that puts out a score. Those scores are what turn into the ratings that James mentioned a moment ago. Okay, so in TrustWell ratings, as James mentioned, we have 4 ratings. We have Platinum, Gold, Silver, and Simply Rated. I'm going to focus primarily my comments on Platinum and Gold. Those are the ratings that are the ones that we want folks to aspire to. A Platinum level rating is truly a best in class in the industry. It's not to say it's a perfect organization. We have yet to encounter any perfect organizations or any organizations where we couldn't give some meaningful feedback on ways that they can improve. But when you think about Platinum and Gold operators, these are companies that are really, really trying hard, not only to meet regulations. They're, generally speaking, those companies are well surpassing regulations. They are really trying to be effective stewards of the environment. They're trying to go above and beyond in what they do to take care of the communities where they work and to ensure the safety of their employees. So we are looking for best practices from those companies, and these are the things where we can benefit from your feedback on what do you think those things ought to be. We, as we find new best practices, when we find a company doing something we haven't encountered before, it gets added to the list. So one of the dynamic characteristics of a TrustWell rating is it's always evolving. So every time we see something new, the bar is raised. And so what we're trying to do here is collectively lift the industry in every state to be a little bit better than we are today. So I'll just walk you briefly through what some of the outputs are. And I know that these are a little bit small on the screen, so the intent is not to go through these in tremendous detail, but primarily just to let you know what we're giving operators at the end of the day. So we'll start on the left. We do give them the performance scoring. We let them know what their inherent profile is, their risk profile of where they're operating. We talk with them about how good their preventative controls and measures are, and not only what have they put in place, but how well are they surveilling those controls? How do they know that they're effective, and how are they able to monitor and repair them when those controls cease to work, like a cement job on a well? If the cement goes bad, how do they know, and what are they doing about it? The second image is a detailed scoring we give them for each aspect of well design and facility operation, everything down to how good is your production casing design, how effectively are you stewarding the water resources in your area, how are you managing traffic associated with your operations, and so on and so forth. So we give them a very detailed list. In the appendix, we always provide detailed commentary, pros and cons of what they're doing, so they can understand where they're coming from and where they sit relative to the rest of the industry. The middle box, what we give them is when we look at the risks in their area, we try to give them a sense of where do they stack up, how effective are their controls against the particular risks in their area. And so when you see bubbles on the far right or on the upper right, those are areas where the risks are elevated and maybe aren't managed as well. So these are things that we can highlight to operators to say, hey, we know you think you're doing a good job. We know you're really trying to do a good job, but from where we sit and what you've shown us, there are some gaps that need to be addressed. So we share that. We give them a detailed look at their strengths and opportunities. Usually people get hyper-focused on their opportunities and the things that they need to improve on, but these companies generally are companies that are trying very hard to be good stewards. And so it's important to recognize the things that are going well also. And then finally, as we do give them a lot of opportunities to work on, we try to create a matrix that explains where they can put their time and effort and their money into reducing their risk. So if there's 10 things on a bullet list, let's say, that they could improve on, where are they going to get their most bang for their buck? Where are they going to get the most bang for the time that they invest? So we try to give them a little bit of a roadmap to how they can improve. I'll turn it back to James.
And if you guys want to take a deeper look, I have left some sample reports with John. You're more than welcome to page through them. This is our team. Our current and founding board members is a rather impressive group of names. I'm just going to point out Dr. Stephen Chu and Carl Fehrenbach, who's the chairman of the Environmental Defense Fund. So we do have input from organizations and individuals that care about our oil and gas being part of a major part of producing our power, but also care about the environment as much. And that is all we have for you guys today. I'm going to open it up to some Q&A. I'm sure there are some questions about how we do what we do.
Board members, any questions? Go ahead.
Yes, quick question. I'm just assuming a lot of the things, your focus areas are classic spill prevention, aquifer, preventing aquifer cross-contamination, acute exposure risks due to gas emissions or something. Does it also include looking at things that maybe aren't acute, like fugitive methane emissions at the...
Absolutely, yeah. So we look at, we call them the WALK criteria: water, air, land, and community. And it's everything from emergency type situations to the more subtle day-to-day things like fugitive emissions, like traffic on the roads and things like that, yep.
Thanks.
Sure.
Other questions? Okay.
I might follow up with one quick question.
Please do.
Just for clarification. The ratings that you do are for your clients or for the people who are doing business with you, but those aren't shared among a client base or with regulatory agencies like ours, are they?
The ratings are, when we work with a client, our ratings and our analytics behind them are confidential unless the client wishes to release them. Right now, we have one client in the Denver-Julesburg Basin who has released their TrustWell rating, which is a platinum rating. But it's up to the end client to release them.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much. That was very interesting.
Well, thank you for having us.
Well, thank you. Well, we'll move on in the agenda then, and the next item on the list is an informal minerals rulemaking update. And James Owen will come up and provide you with where we're at with that process.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. James Owen, the Division's Legislative Liaison. As John mentioned, I'm just providing a brief update to the board on the status of our informal rulemaking process. And this is the process that we initiated back in April for our minerals program relating to the temporary suspension of operations. And I want to emphasize again that this is just the informal process, and so we've been going through it very methodically, making sure that we have a lot of collaboration with all of the stakeholders. So first, the division finalized our proposed draft of the rule back in early June, and then we distributed a copy of that rule to our informal rules review group on June 12th, and we opened a comment period and requested comments. By way of reminder, our informal rules review group includes what the division considers to be a good collection of representatives of the different stakeholders that could potentially be impacted by the rulemaking, which includes industry, environmental groups, and various levels of government entities as well. So the comment period closed in mid-July, and we actually got quite a bit of participation from our informal rules review group. Specifically, we received multiple comment letters that I've distilled down to 91 separate comments, which frankly was more than I had expected. Because of the volume, we are still in the process of reviewing all of those comments. We're determining which of those comments are relevant, which of them are on point, and most specifically, trying to identify the ones that will help us improve the rule. Because of the volume, then we are going to need some more time to complete the review of the comments. So that's where we're at right now, and we're reviewing those on a technical level to see which ones we can actually use to implement to modify the rule. So once we've been able to review all of those comments, then we'll come back to the board, and we will have a request of the board that we can move in one of three directions. The first would be to proceed to the formal process with modifications or with the rule as it is right now. The second would be to create a new draft based off the comments and then send that second draft back through another round with the informal rules review group. And then the third option would be to abandon it. My anticipation based off my review so far is that we'll probably need at least one more round, but that remains still to be seen. So we're still in that review process. I'm happy to take any questions, and my intent is to update the board regularly as we move through the process.
Board members, any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you. Third item on our briefing agenda is to give you an information on a coal bonding action plan that the division was involved with the Office of Surface Mining from the federal government. And Dana Dean has provided the board with some information, and she will go ahead and give you that briefing.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Around a year ago, it may have been later, I gave you a sort of an update on some 10-day notices that the division had received. One of those was in regards to bonding at 3 specific mines in the state of Utah. After several months of review, the Office of Surface Mining decided that the 10-day notice was satisfied and that those mines were properly bonded, but in their review, they felt like we were not being completely consistent with our bonding procedures in the coal program. And it's difficult for different people to always do the exact same thing. And the division has an internal guidance document called the Tech Directive 007, which is supposed to help us be more consistent in our bond reviews. So right after they got rid of the 10-day notice in November of last year, they sent us a draft action plan that had several things that they thought we needed to fix with our coal bonding. After meeting on the phone a few times and them coming out in late March of this year in person and going through some spreadsheets and really talking with them, they realized that some of the things they thought we were not doing, we were doing. So we ended up with a final action plan in the beginning of May of this year, which you should have gotten a copy of that from Julianne. But we ended up in May with a final action plan that had 4 items that we needed to fix. And so we worked with the Office of Surface Mining on fixing those, and part of that was to update our technical directive to include some things that would help us to be more consistent, and then part of it was that we need to use the technical directive and be consistent. So that was a process between us and OSM. An action plan, if not followed, can lead to further action by OSM, including taking away our program or part of our program. So it's a very serious thing that we needed to respond to, and we worked diligently with OSM to get that to where it was acceptable to them. We didn't just accept everything OSM wanted. We definitely pushed back and tried to get as much reasonable thinking into it as possible. But we found when we sent out the finalized new tech directive to industry that they had some concerns. And Mark Compton from the Utah Mining Association immediately contacted me and asked if we could meet about this, and if there was, it seemed like kind of a rulemaking process without going through a public process. And so they wondered if they could have some public comment into what had been changed on our Tech 7 and some of the thinking behind changing the process of bonding the coal mines. So because the action plan had been somewhat contentious and like I said, it's a very serious issue, I promised that I would talk to Dave Berry and Howard Strand from OSM and Jeff Fleischman last week when they were in town for our Western States OSM meetings that we have every year. We did that. We spoke with the Office of Surface Mining. Dave Berry's, he's the director of the Western region. His thought was, we have primacy. We should be able to work with industry to come up and listen to their concerns and be able to meet with them, and if something needs changed, we can change it. And then OSM obviously will be making sure that they still agree with it, but I was surprised that is not the approach that had been taken during the entire action plan process, but I was pleased. So that's, I mean, we do have primacy. We should be able to speak with our regulated community and listen to their concerns. So we have agreed to meet next Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. with the Utah Mining Association. Any members that they feel are pertinent to this discussion and their legal counsel, and we'll have our legal counsel and our bonding technical people, and we'll talk about the specific items that were addressed in the meeting, or in the letter from Mark Compton that was also sent out to you by Julianne. So we're moving forward, and I've told the staff that our job is not to defend the current technical Directive 7, nor is it to just say, oh, we'll do everything UMA wants. We need to look at this reasonably and see, are there things that are incorrect in the way that we have updated this technical directive. And one of the issues that I'll just bring up is, as an example, is they feel like the overhead and profit is being calculated both as a direct cost and then we're adding it on as an indirect cost. Well, if we're doing that we shouldn't be. And I agree. So we'll look at that very closely, line by line, and if that's happening, we'll make sure that it's not. And we'll make sure that it's only being counted once, and we're doing things properly. So we're just trying to get the best bond. We don't want to be underbonded, nor do we want to cause the industry to have an undue burden of being overbonded. So we just want to make sure that we are as technically correct as we can be and doing things properly. And we will continue to work with the Utah Mining Association and the Office of Surface Mining to make sure that we're both complying with what we need to be, the rules and everything, but also addressing the concerns of where we may not be doing something reasonably. That's all I had. Any questions?
Okay. Before we go to questions, Mr. Compton from the Utah Mining Association, would you like to make a comment at all? And then we can maybe focus our questions to maybe both of you.
I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. Mark Compton, Utah Mining Association. I really don't have any specific comment to the tech directive this morning. I think our comment letter to Dana kind of speaks for itself as to some of the concerns that our members have with the directive. You know, we did feel like there were some substantive changes to the directive that maybe it should have gone through a formal rulemaking process, but we definitely appreciate the division's willingness to sit down and talk with us. And I think, you know, we recognize they had the action plan from OSM. They needed to take some action here. I think they recognize through our comments we have some legitimate concerns, and there's certainly there's a willingness on both sides to sit down and next week and begin a discussion on what we might be able to fix to the tech directive. And I think we can get to something that that both sides can agree on, but we'll begin that discussion next week.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Board members, questions? Chris?
I'm just curious, Dana, when OSM first started this process, was there a threat implied or actually spoken that they would, if you couldn't come to an agreement with them, that they would potentially look at taking this part of the program away from the state?
No, they never said that. We just know that I mean, if you have an action plan, that's what it means, is if you don't cure these issues, then the next step is a 733 letter, which is we're taking away part of your program. But they never threatened that or implied it. But, you know, they did say you need to fix these issues. We did ask at one point if we can't agree on some of these items, do we have an appeal avenue? And I believe the answer was no. So I think it was, there was no real threat, but it was sort of, if we can't agree, you have to do what we want you to, and you can't appeal. But we did, I thought we, like I said, we fought back on several things. We got it to be as reasonable as we thought it should be, but understandably, we were not looking at it from all sides. And so I think that the comments that the Utah Mining Association have made are reasonable and something that we need to look into, and I'm very willing to look at. But we never felt like we were being forced with the OSM process to do anything. We felt like we could live with what was put together.
Maybe to add to that, Mr. Hanson, I would just mention that there does appear to be a change in philosophy, at least a little bit at the regional level. I think before it was very much you do this, we'll tell you what to do and get it done. now I think that there's far more willingness to collaborate on a successful outcome.
It's just disappointing that they didn't come into this from OSM side of it with that same approach, because it would, I think, been much better. There would have been a much better outcome.
Right. It may be of interest to the board. There's a, they're calling it a summit next month in Washington, D.C., where representatives of some of the states that are regulated by the Office of Surface Mining will have a chance to talk to OSM leadership and also new Department of Interior leadership about how 10-day notices are handled. Should a citizen's complaint be an automatic 10-day notice? Some of the things that we've felt like they were overbearing with in the last few years, we have the opportunity to speak up about those and go into detail, and I will be representing the state of Utah there. John was asked, but he's got other obligations, and so I will be able to speak directly to new Department of Interior leadership and say, these are some of the things that we have found would have worked better had we gone about them a different way. And I think they're open to that.
Are you soliciting any input from the operators?
I think actually that the National Mining Association may have arranged their own meeting or meetings, and so, I mean, obviously our job is always to represent the state, but if there's something we feel is not working between us and the operators, yes, I will bring that up. I won't necessarily be representing the operator's point of view, but I would be very willing to pass along any concerns you may have, and also, especially if it is hindering the way that we work with the operators.
I think from my point of view, I would say that if you do have comments or things you could provide Dana with prior to going to that meeting, yeah, send an email in and let her know, because it should be focused on how to improve the relationship between the federal government and the state government. But the result is it will have an impact on the operating community. Right. So if you want to share some of your observations on that relationship, we'd appreciate them.
And I can send out, I have a copy of the agenda for that. I can have Julianne send that to the board if you're interested, just to see what the topics are that are planning to be discussed.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dana.
Thank you, Mark. Back to you, Mr. Baza. Pardon me, Director Baza.
Oh, sure. We are through with most of our agenda, but there's a couple of kind of housekeeping things I needed to talk to you about. One is that we've had a little bit of a change in plans regarding our September and October board hearings and field trips. We had to shift from the September meeting, and we'll no longer be going down to see the Greymont operations. Dana is working to try to reschedule a trip to see Great Salt Lake Minerals in October, which would just be a day trip up to their operational facility in Weber County. We have not included a chance to go out to the west side of the lake. That would actually take most of a day in and of itself. So we'll at least be able to go to their office facility and hear a presentation from them and talk to them about what their operations are. They were the company that received an Earth Day award here recently for kind of a best in the state from the board, that we thought this would be a good chance to go out and see what they're doing and hear from them. But that will now be in October. So the date of that will be the day before the October board hearing. And I think there's, as that is calendared, the October board hearing is on the 25th of October, so we'll be doing that field trip on the 24th. But also, and of course, we'll have the October board hearing right here in the Department of Natural Resources. The September board hearing will also be here in Salt Lake City, but we needed to shift our venue because this room is no longer available to us, and we are going to have our September board hearing out at the Core Lab, which we've met in before, and I think you remember the facility, which is just through the parking lot here on the north side of our campus. And I'm sure the people at the Core facility would be happy to show you around a little bit at some point during the day if you have the time to give you an idea of what they're doing out there. They have a host of activities that they conduct out there, including classes and tours for various parties who are interested in the geosciences in Utah. So with that, just to give you that information on our September and October board hearings, are there any questions on that at all right now?
Board members, any questions? Yeah, just one. When do you think the field trip on the 24th will begin and end?
We can probably do that. I'm guessing it's probably an hour or so drive up to the Great Salt Lake Minerals facility, but we can probably start around 7:30 in the morning. Still have plenty of time to view that. We would certainly be done before the close of business that day.
Thank you very much.
Sure. The last thing I'll do is just cover a few more items on the calendar with you. We've got our hearing today, obviously, but next week there is the Uinta Basin Energy Summit, which is happening principally on the 31st, Thursday, the 31st of August. I know that there is a social event reception that's happening the afternoon and evening before. So there will be an opportunity to go out there early and spend the night and then attend the summit on the 31st. Hopefully you've gotten your information to Julianne if you're interested in attending that. If there are any last minute changes or add-ons, we can certainly accommodate that. But let us know what your plans are and we'll make arrangements for your attendance or travel or whatever you need from us. We've got our September board meeting, as I mentioned, in the Core facility on the 27th of September. And then our October board meeting is scheduled for the 25th of October. For your information, we also have a Uinta Basin Oil and Gas Collaborative meeting, which is scheduled for Duchesne on October 12th. There is a couple of state holidays, Labor Day in September, and then the state also celebrates Columbus Day on the 9th of October. So those are two state holidays that will be coming up. And I think that's about it for the Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining in our briefing. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll certainly entertain any questions from the board, or if you'd like to go ahead and move into your public comment period, we're happy to step down at this point.
Okay, thank you very much. Board members, any questions of the director? Just so you know, we plan to have a working lunch today, and we'd like to invite you and John Rogers and Dana Dean to join us.
Okay, sounds good.
It'll be a two-part working lunch, and
okay. We will be there.
Okay,
thank you.
Okay, any other questions? On my agenda, that pretty well does it. So at this time, we would open and invite anyone from the public that has an issue or comment or suggestion for the board that's within our jurisdiction. We'd invite you to come forward and to address us. Our first one is Mark Compton from the Utah Mining Association.
Sorry to come up twice, but I just wanted to acknowledge, so last week we had our 102nd annual convention, and part of the program, we recognized the Utah Mining Association members who won an Earth Day award this year. And board member Hansen did a great job representing the board, and and highlighting the work that those companies are doing, going above and beyond regulation to protect and enhance the environment. So it's a very proud moment for us to be able to recognize those companies in front of their peers. And I just wanted to thank the board for that recognition as well, and just know that the recognition that you gave this spring, it goes beyond just that one board meeting. It is the word's getting out through the industry, so it's very much appreciated. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you
Chairman.
very much. Thank you. Anyone else like to address the board at this time? Seeing none, then we will take a break until 10 a.m. where we'll start our formal hearing.